Prohibition led to corrupt government officials, increasing crime rates, and a poor economy because, despite the Volstead Act, most people wanted to buy alcohol and others wanted to profit off of selling it.
It is the evening of February 1st, 1936, and more than 80 of New York's brothels are being raided. By midnight, more than 100 prostitutes, madams, aka women brothel runners, and bookers, people who rent out hookers, will be under arrest, along with the notorious mobster Charles Lucky Luciano.
Born Salvatore Lucania in Sicily, Italy, on November 24, 1897. Goes by the alias Charles Ross, a.k.a. Charlie Lucky, a.k.a. Charlie Luciano, a.k.a. Charles Lucky Luciano, best known as Lucky Luciano, now known as the father of organized crime.
He moved to New York's Lower East Side at the age of 9 and struggled with speaking English, so he found that his best education would come from learning on the rough streets of New York. And he did learn a lot, because by the age of 17, he had his classmates paying him for his protection, and he gave anyone who didn't pay a big enough beating that they would truly understand the common person's need for protection from bad guys like him.
The Big Six bootleggers of the East Coast are bad guys. As an organized group of crime, they are completely coordinated in their underworld dealing. They all have different backgrounds and had to follow different paths in order to gain power and wealth. Yet the sole driver of their success is a single law, the 18th Amendment. On January 19, 1920, the Prohibition era began. To sell, manufacture, or transport alcohol in the United States was outlawed. Supporters of Prohibition called this new amendment the Noble Experiment. They hoped that by banishing alcohol, they would eradicate poverty and wicked immoral behavior in America, while at the same time helping people reach their highest goals and potential. Unfortunately, this did not happen.
Contrary to the intentions of the Noble Experiment, crime and public drunkenness increased substantially after the amendment was initiated. Essentially, people believed that Prohibition was idiotic, and as a result, all other laws were too. In the year 1922, the second year of the Volstead Act, there were about 485,270 more annual arrests for drunkenness than in the year 1919 before the act came into effect. In the year 1922, there were also 1,738,400 more annual arrests for all crimes than in the year 1919 when the act was not in effect. The backlog of cases overflowed and jails filled at alarming rates. As a result, judges often offered the plea bargain, in which an accused criminal pleaded guilty to a lighter sentence so that hundreds of cases could be cleared at a time. Another negative and noticeable effect of Prohibition was the damaged economy. Restaurants had to close down because they did not receive the money they usually did from also selling liquor. The attendance of movie showings also dropped, and all the workers from liquor making and transporting jobs became unemployed. The government itself was harmed by the amendment, as states who got much of their budget money from tax liquor lost much of their revenue. During Prohibition, the federal government lost billions in tax revenue while also paying millions to enforce the Volstead Act. In New York, the home of countless gangs, bootleggers, and crime families, 75% of the state's revenue came from taxed liquor sales. This, of course, led to budget cuts and lower pay for public servants, aka cops and courts. It may have been because the officials wanted more money, they disliked Prohibition, or they feared organized crime vengeance. But corruption plagued police stations, courtrooms, and the Federal Bureau of Prohibition. Ultimately, Lucky Luciano was arrested and charged with 62 counts of compulsory prostitution. He was sentenced by Special Prosecutor Thomas E. Dewey to 30 to 50 years in prison. Lucky Luciano was obviously guilty of many more terrible crimes that he would not be prosecuted for. Hundreds of mobsters will not receive any punishment at all, letting many criminals carry on to this day. The Noble Experiment was a failure that skyrocketed the amount of felonies committed nationwide, halted America's fiscal growth, and normalized the existence of unethical or crooked civil servants. Some fun facts about Prohibition and the people included in this video. Thomas Dewey, Lucky Luciano's prosecutor, hired the first black female to work in New York City as a district attorney. Dewey was also the 47th governor of New York and attempted to run for president twice as the Republican representative, but lost to FDR and Harry S. Truman. It's likely that Lucky Luciano received the nickname Lucky due to his luck with gambling, but it could also be due to the many escapes he had from murderous attacks. One such attack happened in 1929, and Charles received a scarred chin and a droopy eye. It's also likely that people just pronounced his name wrong so often that the nickname Lucky stuck.